Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session about dataset parameters. My name is Deepak Singh. I'm a senior solutions architect with Amazon QuickSight, and today I'm joined by my colleague Ashok Dasanini. Ashok.
Yeah. Hello, all. Welcome to deep dive on QuickSight Dataset Parameters learning series. Thanks for joining. I'm Ashok, a senior solution architect.
Okay, so today's topic, dataset parameters. Before diving deep into dataset parameters, we will learn a little bit about basics of parameters and then look into most common use cases, walk you through a couple of demos as how to use these dataset parameters within a dataset analysis, and then share some references. So parameters, right? What is a parameter? Many of you already know, some of you may be new to QuickSight. Parameter is a named variable that can be used to hold on to a single value or multiple values, right? And you can use parameter to pass those values to, do calculations to create interactions, navigations on your dashboards, right? And once you create the parameters, there are a few ways you can assign values to you. You can assign some static or dynamic default values. You can create parameter controls. You can create a filter and associate parameter to that filter, or you can use actions to set the values of a parameter. Now, within an analysis, you have different usage of the parameters. So for example, if you want to build interactivity, enable your end users, business users to slice and dice insights on a dashboard, right? You can create a parameter control. You can create a filter and then associate the parameter with that filter for your end users and business users to interact with the dashboards. You can build interactivity using URL actions on a dashboard, right? You can use parameters to pass values. If you wanted to sort of create, say, navigation or drill down from one sheet of an analysis to another. You can use parameters in calculated fields if you want to. That way, user interactions and enabling you to capture different values and use those for calculation purposes. Oftentimes, when you create titles, those are static, but if your use case requires those titles and to be dynamic, you could use parameters in titles as well to create a dynamic experience for your users. Okay, so we just learned a little bit about what is a parameter and how to use that in an analysis. Until dataset parameters were enabled as a feature, you couldn't define a parameter within a dataset. So dataset parameters are primarily used within a dataset. And then when you define those dataset parameters, you can link them with the parameters that you define in an analysis so that it works all together as a seamless experience from end user perspective. Now, from the usage perspective within a QuickSight, oftentimes you may run into a situation where you have a large data set, and either you don't want to define that as a SPICE data set, or it's larger than size of a SPICE data set, or you want to enable near real-time interaction or access to the data for your end users. And in that case, if you want to apply filters or limit the data that is rendered by your visuals within the dashboard, you could use the dataset parameters and enable a dynamic filtering within your dataset. So as an example, if you look at the bottom of the screen, here how we're trying to enable a dynamic a dataset parameter within the where clause of a SQL query, right? And that allows users to interact with the data directly from the dataset, applying filters based on the selections they're making within a dashboard. If your use case is about, say, if you have many static values or instances of static values within a calculation or within a query, you could use a dataset parameter to change within a single action. Or in the past, say, you have situations where you're defining parameters within an analysis, and if you want to use the same parameter or or calculation from one analysis to another analysis that use the parameters, you wouldn't be able to do it. Now, with the dataset parameters available to you, you can create a calculation, say, within a dataset, and then that dataset can be used to build multiple analysis or dashboards, right? So you are benefiting from the reusability of that calculation, build once, use many places, many times. And also you are benefiting from, say, if your organization has segregation of duties where one set of folks are creating data set and the other set of folks are actually building analysis and publishing that as a dashboard, right? In that case, if you want to create a data set with calculations that use parameters, it could be helpful. It helps you meet requirements in those situations and scenarios as well. Okay, so next one is common use cases, right? So we learned about what is a data set parameter, right? It's a parameter that's created within a data set and then can be used for various purposes. So what are some of the common use cases here, right? We just looked at as an example, if you are creating a data set with custom SQL, you can use this to apply in where clause of that custom SQL, limiting the data, and hence improving the performance of your dashboard, because when you apply dataset parameter as a filter within your where clause, only the resulting data will be transferred to your dashboard and not the entire data set because of the select clause or of your query, right? Or think about if your use case is embedding a dashboard, either you're trying to embed a dashboard internally or for external use cases for your own customers. You can pass parameters from your host applications to QuickSight Dashboard, right? And QuickSight Dashboard has parameters that can be used for interaction, but those parameters are also, you are able to link them to underlying data set parameters. Now, by linking the three levels of your parameters, right, passing it from your host application to QuickSight Dashboard, and then linking the dashboard analysis parameter to dataset parameter, you are controlling what data is, shows up in your dashboard from the actions up within your host application. So we can see a demo of something like that. And then, one of the third use cases, I've put it out there, and I'm sure you will come up with many more use cases that's relevant for your requirements and your scenarios. But the third use case I put it out there is, think about, say, for example, if you're a retail store, that sells multiple brands, and now you're curious about how do you want to benchmark or capture the sales performance of users from one brand, and how those users are, how the other brands are performing for same of those customers, basically. So think about if you have, say, Nike and Under Armour as two brands, you want to know how Nike customers are, or how Under Armour as a brand is performing for all of those Nike customers. You can also use in similar scenarios using dataset parameters. So those were some of the common use cases. You can find many more depending on how your use case and scenario is. And we'll look at a couple of examples as a demo here in a moment. But when you are ready to use dataset parameters, there are a few considerations you want to think about. One, dataset parameters are available when you create a dataset using custom SQL, direct query parameter, and not SPICE dataset parameters. So if you have a dataset that is a SPICE dataset, you cannot use dataset parameters with those datasets. Dataset parameters do not support dynamic default value setup. So when you create a dataset parameter, you can create a static default value for that parameter, but you're not able to create or set up a dynamic default value for that parameter. And the third one here I've listed out is cascading controls. So what does a cascading control mean in QuickSight? Think about two filters where the value that list in one of the filters is dependent on the selection of values in the previous filters, right? So think about if you have a region filter and a subregion filter. So the values in subregion filter will be restricted based on the values in region filter. That's what we call cascading controls, right? So if you are thinking about using dataset parameters in a similar scenario, the dataset parameters do not support cascading controls. So then in that case, you just have to go and make those as regular controls, right? But as long as you keep those considerations in mind, and we have a bit more details as reference available to you towards the end of the call, you can get into relevant details as you try to go build analysis dashboard or use a dataset parameters for your use cases. Okay, so with that bit of a background, what I'll do is I'm going to hand it over to Ashok. We'll walk through a couple of demos as how to define dataset parameters, how to set up them, how to link them with analysis, and what steps, a sequence of steps do you need to go through to make that work for you. Ashok?
Yeah, thank you, Deepak. So in this demo, we are going to look into a flow, how we're going to use a custom SQL to create a direct query based data set. And the first flow will be like without a dataset parameter and how we're going to use that dataset in an analysis and create some controls using the parameter and filter combination. And we're going to look into how that query is getting logged into Redshift. We are going to use the Redshift as one of the data sources for the demo today. And using the audit logs, we're going to monitor how the query construction looks like when there is no dataset parameter is being mapped. And the second flow will be we're going to show the steps how to create a dataset parameter and how to link it to one control in the QuickSight analysis view. And again, we're going to check how that query is being constructed and passed to the Redshift. And this is being the demo dataset. We have created a dataset with 25 million records for the demo purpose, but in the real world use case where you have a huge volume of data set, like millions and billions of records, in that case, you will see the real performance difference when using the dataset parameter in your query. Let's start with this. Here is my Redshift instance with a movie dataset where the sample records are showing the index, user ID, movie name, the rating and genre. And we are going to use the rating as a field for the controls to view the data set or view the results in the analysis view. Let's go to the QuickSight screen, and I'm going to create a new data set using one of the Redshift connectors that I already have in my account. I'm going to create a data set, and like Deepak mentioned, this was designed mainly for the direct query with a custom SQL. So I'm going to go with this use custom SQL option here, and I'm going to place a query. Just going to copy it from my Redshift editor. And here is my simple SQL, select star from my public movie datasets table. And confirm query. And I'm going to keep this in direct query mode. And before going to visualize, I'm going to do edit or preview. Okay, here is my table results. And I'm going to give a custom name for this dataset for the demo reference. And at this point, we are not creating any dataset parameters. I'm going to keep it as a simple select statement of SQL. I'm going to create an analysis out of it and apply, close this, and publish and visualize. I'm going to create an interactive sheet for this demo and just creating a simple table visual and adding movie name, user ID, rating, and index. Or just I'm going to keep it just rating for now, just to keep it simple. You can see these dots below where it is currently rendering or requesting the query. And we have all the three fields with user ID, ratings, and all that. And at this point, we are going to create a parameters in QuickSight and are going to tie it with a filter. So first, I'm going to create a parameter. I'm going to keep it as an integer. Single value, I'm going to currently default it to 0 and create. Okay. And I want to use this as a filter. And in this case, I'm going to create a filter and map it to the ratings field, one of the fields in my data set. And in this case, I'm going to use some parameter and change the scope. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a filter for this visual with the sum as aggregation, and I'm going to keep it as greater than or equal to. And I'm changing the scope. Instead of a direct field mapping, I'm going to use a parameter as a value that passes to the control, from the control passing it to the filter and applying to the visual. Okay, we have it now. Now let me go to the parameters page. I'm going to add this control here. I'm going to call it as movie rating parameter. And I'm going to keep it as a slider starting with 0 to 5 and with a step size of 1 and add it. So now here you see I have a movie rating parameter with 0. And let's say if I want to list any movies that is rating above 3. So you can see now it has returned the results all with a movie rating 3, where this value is getting passed to the filter and then limiting the data from the data source. Now let's go to the Redshift instance here. And this is the Redshift cluster VPC I mapped to the QuickSight data source. And I'm going to retrieve queries that fired in last 5 minutes, apply, and I'm going to sort it down. Here is the latest query that is executed, and how you can validate is here you can see that the query is being fired from the QuickSight, which comes with a unique ID. And even this is logged into the CloudTrail log if you want to take a look at the reference where the query ID is generated. And this is the query now the QuickSight has fired. The key difference here is you can see that first it is doing a select star from dev, where every single record is scanned into the data set. And then it is applying the filter that we applied, which is greater than or equal to 3. So in this case, what is happening is even it can be millions or billions of record. It scans through every single record and then applies filters on top of it, which will add a lot of utilizes instance resources and the query time as well. So with the current instance type, to process this volume of data, it shows it took about 3 seconds to render. Just to verify this again, let me show you this query. Here you can see the complete query, where the inner query has select star from dev public movie data sets. And on top of that, a where class is applied. This is the key differentiator between using a dataset parameter and not without a dataset parameter. Okay. Now let's go back to the visual. And this time, I'm going to modify the dataset and create a new dataset parameter for this. I'm going to edit this dataset. And first, I'm going to create a parameter. And I'm going to call this as TS movie rating. And I'm going to keep it as integer and static default as 0. Create. So now we have a parameter that is created in the dataset. Edit SQL query. And to this, I'm going to add an where condition. Select star from movie dataset, where rating is the field in my dataset equals to DS dataset parameter movie rating. Okay. By default, it is set to 0 now. And I'm going to change the condition rating greater than or equal to 0. Apply. You can see that it returned the results, which is query looks good now with the dataset parameter. Apply and close, and I'm going back to visualization. So here are the few things to note. You can see these parameters are now highlighted with a small orange dot, which is indicating there is an unmapped dataset parameter, right? So now we have this parameter from the dataset and the one we created from the analysis view. So one thing we're going to change before mapping is I'm going to delete this filter, which is no more required because it is directly going to drive by passing the value into the dataset parameters. Going back here, I'm going to map this parameter to an existing parameter QSPAM analysis. Okay, so now the dataset parameter is mapped to the control that we created, the parameter control that we created at the analysis layer. Now let's retry this query again. So once again, I'm going to change the query to keep it at any movies that has a rating 3 or above, where you can see the same results being returned. Now let's go back to the cluster. Queries and loads. I'm going to refresh this. You can see this new query has been fired a few seconds ago. Here you can see the main differentiator. Now the query is formed, select star from the dev movie dataset with ratings greater than or equal to 3. So this way, the primary scan of data will be driven based on the where clause, and it reduces the volume of data or subset of data is retrieved, and then it on top of that it applies the QuickSight applies all this aggregations or selections made from the specific table. So this way you can speed up the query, and it's not only limited from the QuickSight console view. Even in case of embedding, you can pass the parameter values from your web application to the QuickSight, and that can be tied back to the dataset parameters. So let's say you have a custom controls built on your web application with specific values defined. You can pass those dynamically to the QuickSight, and then in turn that gets passed to the dataset parameter and can retrieve only the subset of data, which reduces the latency, and the visual rendering will be much faster in case of direct query mode. Okay. So with that, we came to end of the demo. And let me quickly go back and show you the dataset parameter setup once again here. So this is the data prep page where you have create the parameters, and you can tie that to the custom SQL. Okay. So just quickly reiterate, we have done two flows. One is we created a custom SQL using the Redshift data source, and we create a visual and tying that and created a parameter in the analysis layer and tying it to the filter for retrieving the data, which scans entire table of data and then applies filters on top of it for the selected value. And we have seen one more flow where we created a dataset parameter and then mapping it to the analysis parameter, and which will add where clause and limiting only subset of data based on the user selection made from the analysis control. Okay. With that, we have completed the demo.
All right. Okay. And here on the screen right now, if you'd like to take a screenshot or scan any of these QR codes, these are some resources that our essays have provided on today's topic to help you through this learning journey and explore other ways to get involved and learning more about QuickSight.